Welcome to lesson 2.2, landforms. Before we get too far into it, I want to make sure that you have the proper sheet in front of you, and that should look something like this. It's not like the typical notes we've done for past lessons, but much like the totals one, these are very specific, and I don't want to make a note sheet that has 20 key points because they're basically all key points. This would be very straightforward. So make sure you have the sheet that looks like this, or if you're on the website for Unit 2 and you want to make a copy and type them in, you certainly can do that as well. Just know that at some point you're going to have to show me. You'll have to show me this, and we've talked before about the pitfalls of doing it electronically and jumping back and forth on tabs, or writing it out longhand with the potential of losing it. So weigh those options carefully and decide what's best for you. But just know that this will work. And if you honestly wanted to use a piece of notebook paper, that would work too. But I just thought I'd give you a format that helps you go along with the slides one by one. And obviously you can pause them as you go while you're watching this. So we'll get into it here. We have 20 different landforms that we talk about. And when we talk about landforms, we're really talking about major landforms. There are way more than 20. We're really going to focus on we'll focus on about 10 of them, but we'd like you to know more than just that many going forward. So of the major landforms, there's even more that are major, if you want to think of it that way. So we will get into a little bit of that in a second here, but first and foremost, make sure you have your note sheet up, you're ready to go, and that you can follow along. Remember, you can pause whenever you need to make this work for you. So we'll start off with one that we probably all know, and that is a volcano. A volcano is a mountain that erupts in an explosion of molten rock, gases, and ash. And when we mean molten, we mean it's melting. So lava is really nothing more than rock that becomes so hot it melts. And there's obviously more to it than that. I know you guys talk about this with your science classes, and I'll let them do the majority of the talking as to how what makes it molten and stuff like that. Two, another one we probably know, island. An easy way to think of it is an island is land that is completely surrounded by water. And so when we often think about, trying to hide that. And when we think about land that is completely surrounded by water, that's an easy way to remember how to spell it as well. An island is land surrounded by water. Three, strait. A strait is a narrow waterway that connects two bodies of water. So we have the Mediterranean Sea over here, and then we also have the Atlantic Ocean over here. This is known as the Strait of Gibraltar, and this is Africa, and this is the southern part of Portugal, and there's just a little narrow waterway there. And really, that's just connecting these two larger bodies of water. So if we were out, if we were pulled back a little bit more from a higher level view, it might be easier to see. But the strait, just so we're sure, that's why I put that circle in there. The strait is that narrow body where it gets very narrow and then it expands again. And basically, it's connecting two larger bodies of water. I'm going to move this because I don't think I want this. There we go. 4, mouth. And like you might think, your mouth, the mouth of the river is kind of where a river will empty into a larger body of water. It doesn't really matter what kind it is, just know that it's larger. So a lot of times it's like a river that empties into a larger lake, a big reservoir, the Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico, an ocean, a sea, etc. The biggest thing about the mouth of in a landform is to know that it is going from one smaller body of water into a larger. 5 is marsh. We have marshes around here. We also have them in the Eastern Hemisphere too. You might live by a marsh. You might drive by a marsh every day, but just know that a marsh is a low-lying land which is flooded in wet seasons or when the tide becomes high. So like in the southern coasts, this happens quite a bit. And can remain waterlogged, meaning even when the water recedes, the ground is very, very squishy. You might, like I said, you might have hunting ground that you go to that's like this. If you've ever been to the coasts, there are marshes out there, especially in the southern part, southeastern part of the United States. We were out in Virginia this last summer, and they had plenty of marshes there too, where the water would pull back from the ocean, and then it would still be very soggy there no matter what. 6 is a butte, not a butt, not butty, butte. A butte is an isolated hill, meaning it's by itself, and it has very steep sides and a fairly flat top. It might not be perfectly flat, but it is fairly flat. It's similar to a plateau, but much, much narrower. 7 is a steppe. And again, it's not a steppy. A steppe is just a very large plain, meaning a flat, grassy area that's very dry. So a very large plain of dry grassland. And we have plenty of those around here. But they also have them in the Eastern Hemisphere. 8, canyon. A canyon is a deep gouge between two cliffs that is formed by water erosion over time. And usually that water erosion shows itself in the form of a river. So if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, you know at the very bottom of it is the Colorado River. It's as a result of that water constantly running through there, and the gouge between the two cliffs constantly gets deeper and deeper. It's not something you're going to see immediately, but over millions of years, it's constantly getting deeper. 9 is a valley. I always think of Hidden Valley Ranch. If you ever look on the bottle, right, it's kind of looks like a fun little place to live. And a valley is a low area between hills or mountains, and it typically also has a river running through it. And that river is typically as a result of the hills or the mountains that have water runoff, and they collect in one area. Usually the low point of the valley is where the water would run through it. And then a lot of towns end up being built in valleys because they have that water source from the runoff from the mountains as a resource. 10, here's what we were talking about earlier when we saw the butte. A plateau is basically a butte, but just much bigger, right? Much wider. So it's a plain, it's high above sea level. It usually has a cliff on all sides, meaning it would definitely be very hard to navigate it, to climb up it. It's usually quite steep on the sides, much like a butte, but like we said before, it's just a little bit bigger. 11, mountain. Again, another one we probably know. You've either seen a mountain on TV or been to the mountains or whatever it may be. A mountain is a large natural elevation of the Earth's surface, rising abruptly, meaning quickly. So it's not gradual from the surrounding level. If you've been out to the Rocky Mountains, if you've ever driven that, you get west of Denver and it quickly climbs and climbs and climbs, and the area around you start to see the mountains. They look like little hills from far away. The closer you get, you realize it's very steep, and it's on both sides of you as you're driving down I-70. So probably one we know. Maybe you've seen them in your life, but just know that it's a result of plates colliding, and that's how the rapid elevation change occurs. 12, desert. A desert is a dry, barren area of land. Barren meaning nothing's really going on there. Especially one covered with sand that is characteristically desolate. Desolate meaning that there's not a lot of life. Waterless and without vegetation. So we usually associate the Middle Eastern deserts with this, but we also have deserts in the United States. A way to remember a desert has one S and dessert has two S's, because you'd probably want two desserts, right? But you wouldn't want two deserts. So that's an easy way to remember how to spell it. 13 is an oasis. You may have seen these in cartoons or movies or something like that, where the person is just emaciated and just can't, is wasting away and searching for water, and luckily finds it in the middle of nowhere, right? And a lot of times it's not a mirage, where a mirage appears like there is water there. These actually are real. And we'll learn a lot about these as we get to that unit later on in the spring. But know that an oasis is a fertile spot in a desert, so it's a little bit of an anomaly. And these palm trees, these palm dates, are a life source for the people who live nearby, because it provides them with a lot of things. They can make rope out of the bark. They can weave the leaves to create shade. They can use the dates to feed themselves and the animals that come off the palm tree. They can also dry them out and use them to start fires. So there's a lot going on here, and at first glance it might not look like much, but it is a vital resource for the people who live out in this area. 14, an archipelago. That's kind of a hard word to say, but also a fun word to say. Archipelago. Not archipelago, not archipelago, just archipelago. An archipelago is a group of islands or a chain of islands. So the one you're probably most familiar with would be Hawaii or something like that, right? There are plenty of archipelagos in the Eastern Hemisphere as well that we'll be exploring throughout the year. And I think we've already had some experience with archipelagos through some of our readings. 15, peninsula. You may recognize this peninsula as being Italy. Peninsula is a piece of land almost surrounded by water or projecting out into a body of water. So usually we say it's surrounded by water on three sides, and that 95% of the time is true. The one that we probably are most familiar with would be Florida, right? If you look at Florida, it has water on three sides. It protrudes out into the water. If we took out that little protrusion there of Florida, we'd have kind of a very smooth corner to the United States of America, right? I'm trying to wait a little bit so you can write, but I also realize I'm probably talking faster than you're writing this down. So I hope you're not getting frustrated, because the idea is that the video is not 40 minutes long while I'm just sitting here with wait time for you to be writing it down. Knowing that these are on Edpuzzle and you have to watch the entire video, I'm trying to be a little bit quicker. Excuse me. So that you can get this done in a timely manner. And obviously you can pause these as we go too if I'm going too fast. 16 is a glacier. A glacier is a slowly moving mass of or river of ice formed by the accumulation and compaction, meaning a bunch of snow that gets compressed so tightly it is very, very dense and hard, and you can walk on it. You'd have to chisel it and hammer it to break it apart. Usually a glacier is found near the poles. You've probably heard about glaciers in the North Pole. There are glaciers near the South Pole, and then there are glaciers on mountains. Sometimes they exist way up in the mountains. There are lakes, and the ice run off, the water runs off, freezes, gets hard, and creates a glacier. A waterfall. A waterfall is a cascade, meaning it's falling down, right? Gravity's doing its work. Cascade of water falling from a height, formed when a river or stream flows over a precipice or a steep incline. And a precipice just means an area that has a sudden drop off, right? There's nowhere for the water to go except for the water to fall down to a lower elevation. So there's the name kind of implies what it is, right? It's a place where water is going to fall. Isthmus. An isthmus is kind of the opposite of a strait. If a strait is a narrow body of water that connects two larger bodies of water, then an isthmus is a narrow strip of land. And it says with sea on either side, but I'm going to show you in a second where that's not necessarily true. Forming a link between two larger areas of land. And so if we Google map Madison, Wisconsin, I don't know if you have any family members who go there. Let's change this to this. So if you have any friends who go, or family members who have been going to UW Madison ever, you will see. So all of this is campus down here, and it is an isthmus, right? It is a narrow body of land that separates two bodies of water, right? And so if we go back to our notes, right, just like the picture here, it's a narrow body of land, and there's two bodies of water on either side, right? Sorry. And then there's the larger body of land is over here, and the larger body of land, the airport, all that stuff is over here. Okay. That. So an isthmus is basically the opposite of a strait. Instead of a narrow body of water, it's a narrow body of land. Lake, I would bet a house payment. You guys have all been to a lake in your life. Basically, a lake is a large body of water surrounded by land, and so, I have a picture. There's not a whole lot you can say about that. We live in the land of 10,000 lakes, and there's a lake pretty much everywhere you go. And I know a lot of you have told me already you have cabins and places you go in the summer, so I'm guessing a lot of you know what this is already. So, and finally, delta. A delta is a landform that's created by the deposition of sediment that is carried by a river as it flows. As the flow leaves its mouth, right? So we have the river, we have the mouth of the river, which would be kind of down here, right? If we think about it, this is the mouth of the river where it opens up. And then if we test my drawing skills here, I don't know how good they're going to be, but it gets its name because the Greek symbol for delta is a triangle. And if we look like this, I'm sorry, it's not great, but I'm doing this freehand with a wireless mouse pad. So you see how it kind of forms a triangle there, right? And so that's why it's called the delta, because it's a symbol for change in science as well. And I'm not sure if you guys were there yet or not, but you will be when you get to high school for sure. And so when we talk about that, that's why it's called the delta, because it's basically when they say the deposition, it's all the sediment and all the stuff that's along the bottom of the river keeps getting pushed out with the water flow, and then it settles, right? So it settles all along in here, and you see these little tiny little waterways. Eventually, these will get higher and higher and higher, and they will fill in. And this delta will keep pushing this way. There we go. My best drawing I can do, right? Okay, we'll eventually get pushed that way. Okay, so that is it for those notes. We have our assignment now, right? I want to talk to you about our assignment very quickly. So the assignment, oops, you are going to have an option. You can either do the Google Slide Landforms project, and I won't get into it because I know some of you won't pick it, but basically you're going to use Google Slides, and you are going to pick the following terms here. Most of them we just went over. And then you'll pick 2 additional terms down here, okay, for a total of 8. And if you want to do that, you can take the first one, let's say a volcano, right? And you'll have this attached to your lesson. You will pick the title, let's say it's volcano, the definition of volcano. You'll put a picture of a volcano in here, and you also need to have an arrow or a circle like I did in my notes, showing, like right here, right, showing where the actual landform exists. What was I going to say? Sorry. And then this says caption for picture above. So what this would look like is you need to tell me, what am I looking at here? Okay, so if you're saying this is a picture of a volcano in Iceland, that's what you'd put here, right? But you got to be very specific, okay? And you're only going to talk about landforms that are actually real in and exist in the Eastern Hemisphere. So that's going to be Africa, Europe, Asia, or Australia, okay? So I have an example right here. I used cliff because that's not one you're going to use, so I figured that would work. A cliff is a vertical or nearly vertical rock exposure, right? And then I have a picture of the cliff, and I have an arrow pointing to what actually is the cliff, and it's this high vertical rock exposure. That's the actual cliff right there, okay? And then my caption below, I'm saying where this place at. This is a real place. You could go there. The White Cliffs of Dover, which is in the United Kingdom, kind of on the southern part of that. So that's all you'd have to do. And then I have all the templates right here for you to work on, okay? So you would just fill them in as you go. So that's option 1. If you want to, if you're like, well, I like this piece of it because it involves a computer and me Googling pictures of these different landforms in the Eastern Hemisphere, and then writing a caption for the picture above. I'm going to change this. I'm not going to do it right now because we're recording, but I'll add, like where is this place in the Eastern Hemisphere, so it's very specific, and you don't have a problem with that. Once you do this, you can obviously get rid of the words in here and then move on to the next one. Don't leave caption for picture above. Delete that and actually just do what it says. You delete the word title, right? This is just a template for you to get through it all. Okay, so let's say that's not your thing. The other way you could do it is you could draw this, okay? So you could, you can either use just blank sheets of paper. I have plenty here. We would probably, let's cut them in half so they're not monstrous. And you will just take the half sheet of plain white paper, fold it in half, and then on one side you could just follow the same thing. You could just title volcano, a definition of volcano, and then you're just going to draw a picture of a volcano. Obviously you're drawing it, so there's no caption required for that piece of it. And we'll talk more about this in class, but the rationale is you're going to draw something, so it's hard to say, oh, this is exactly what a volcano in Iceland looks like. But because it takes you longer to do the artwork, I'm not forcing you to do the actual Google searches and find the actual picture of a real volcano in the Eastern Hemisphere, and also take the time to label it and tell me where exactly it is. So there's kind of a trade-off, right? The art one would take you, I'm sorry, neither one should take you more or less time, But if you think about it, the artwork takes more time than just finding a picture and pasting it into a Google slide. But the research part of finding these landforms in the Eastern Hemisphere takes more time, obviously. So I feel like it evens out. So again, the parameters are the same. You'll have to draw these 10, and then you pick 2 more down here. So you'll do 12 drawings, or you'll do 12 landforms through the Google Slides. That won't change either way. Okay. So I hope that was beneficial. I hope that makes sense, I guess. If it doesn't, please make sure that you are coming up and asking. Otherwise, you're going to have, I'm saying 2 class periods to do this. That gives you 6 a day. And I think that's enough time. And we can always reevaluate. All right, well, time to get started. Thank you.